the Executive Director for the Department of Health and Human Services for the Wimmera Southwest area. I'm a proud Murrawurri man. Our tribe is from far north New South Wales, up past Burke, in the Kalgoa region of New South Wales. Nganguru, Pinati, Kami Yakaka, Pitara, Kalkari. I ask the spirits of our old people to come beside us and walk together, doing right and doing good and remaining strong. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the various lands on which we meet today, and I acknowledge the elders, all Aboriginal people with us, and as stated in language, I ask the spirits of the old people that came before them to walk with us and assist us in making good decisions today. So I'll give just a brief overview about journey so far, and then I'll be handing over after that to Anita Thomas, who will be our facilitator for today. So in terms of the journey so far, over the last 18 months, the primary care partnerships across the Wimmera Southwest have been working with the population health and community wellbeing teams to collaborate on the development of a rural and regional livability framework. A livable community has been defined as safe, attractive, socially inclusive and cohesive, environmentally sustainable, affordable and diverse housing, linked by convenient public transport, walking and cycling infrastructure to employment, education, local shops and community services, leisure and cultural opportunities, and of course public open space. Over the last 10 years, there have been various research, assessment and framework developments for livability, but primarily these have been done in an urban setting. Rural and regional communities, health services, councils and other services and organisations face unique challenges. These include socioeconomic disadvantage, age structure, population spread, distance or remoteness, market failures, staff attraction and retention, and of course digital connectivity, which I'm sure some of us will experience challenges with today. On the positive side, the benefits of rural and regional living has been highlighted in the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic. The low population density and population spread means our rural communities hold a strong advantage over metropolitan and urban centres with high population density. Rural living offers cheaper housing, fresh air, space, natural environment, and lack of costly congestion seen in metropolitan areas. I'd argue that we also have better music if we include country and western in that. A locally designed rural and livability framework can be used to increase our understanding of what factors in our community make them livable, what factors we can influence to address disadvantaged communities' livability, thereby improving their health and wellbeing, what attracts and keeps people in these communities, and who are the partners we can engage with to improve outcomes for rural and regional communities. So where to from here? With an increased understanding, organisations will be able to use the results to inform local and regional-wide planning, showing how existing areas of focus, initiatives and individual partner strategic directions can align across the region to influence, impact and support joined up long-term improvements in rural and regional livability. I'm excited to see the rural and regional livability, the rural and regional livability looks like for the Great South Coast, and where we can collaborate further across organisations, linking in with new and existing strategies to improve the lives of our diverse communities. So thank you again, everyone, for making the time to be with us today. I'll now pass you over to Anita Thomas, who is your facilitator for today. Thanks, Anita. Now I get to use my t-shirt that I had made up, Anita. And I don't know if everyone can see it or not. I just have to turn my background off for a second to show this. But it is.
I think we need a drum roll here.
It's well worth having a look.
Yeah.
None.
Oh, you're on mute. Yeah, fantastic. I think there'll be a whole lot of memes that get turned into T-shirts over this pre-Christmas period. Thanks very much, Adam, for your introduction to today and your acknowledgement to country. And it's really, you know, I love hearing language in acknowledgement, so thank you very much for that. So welcome, everybody. We have still got people coming into the space. And so I think that will keep happening for a little while now. So the agenda for today, we've got an hour and a half of your time, and my goodness, have we crammed that time into the max to try to get through an opportunity to share with you the work of the partner organisations to develop this rural and regional livability framework. I'm interested to know from the working group whether you are now going to consider country and Western music as one of the key elements of livability in your the Great South Coast. So the idea of today is basically to introduce you to the Livability Framework, to see what it is, an insight into its development, an insight into the thinking that has developed the framework, to give a sense of what this framework looks like actually in practice, to take it from the paper and put it into your community, put it into your planning processes, put it into the way you work. And then to hear your feedback. What did you like about it? Where do you think there's confusion? Can you see yourselves within this framework? So we really want to have this opportunity today to hear from you in order to strengthen the work that's been done to date. And then we'll also finish the session, of course, with an understanding of what the next steps are for this process towards a Great South Coast rural and regional livability strategy. Obviously, in order to get your voice, to hear what you think, we need to use Zoom, and we need to use the functionality of Zoom that enables us to listen and to hear what it is people are saying. And we are going to use polls, chat and breakout rooms to do that. So there'll be a bit of toing and froing. Hopefully you'll have the chance to interact with some colleagues and maybe some new people today in various breakout rooms that will be, one breakout room that we'll be running today, and also the opportunity for chat. So the way the chat will work is that there's going to be specific times when we ask questions of you to respond in the chat. And that will be obvious through the course of the morning, but we are also going to use the chat as a way of gathering your questions. And there's someone going to be monitoring the chat and answering those questions as we go. So we're not necessarily going to be expecting the people who are talking to the slides to answer your questions as we go. They won't be monitoring the chat. Someone else will be doing that as we go. But please use the chat. We really want to capture your thinking. So it doesn't have to be a question, it could just be a comment, but that's our way of capturing what it is you are doing today. It's really interesting for us to know who's with us in the room. We obviously have got the big long list, but you're probably curious as to who else is here today. The first step towards that is I'm going to get you to rename yourself. And what it is you should be able to see on your Zoom screen is 3 dots in the right-hand corner. Yeah. Where you will push those 3 dots and it will give you an opportunity to rename yourself. Can everyone find those 3 dots to rename yourself? And the idea would be to just put your name, your first name and the name of your organisation, or first and second name and the name of your organisation. Give us people a sense of who is with us today. So while you're having a go at doing that, I want you actually for now to everyone turn their cameras off.
Anita, to make this better, I think you should stop sharing your screen. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So I want you to all turn your cameras off. That includes you. Yes, that's everyone now. That includes you, Joe. That includes everybody. So turn your cameras off. People know how to do that. Still got a few cameras on. Oh, it's embarrassing for those people who don't know how to quite turn themselves off. Now, what I want you to do is all those people that work in local government, I want you to turn your cameras on. So this will give us an idea of the people who work in local government across the 5 local governments of the Great South Coast. And I think that we've got some people from actually one of the Shepparton local government with us today as well. So you can see we've got some people from local government. Now everyone turn their cameras off, and I want people who work in health services to turn their cameras on. And Peter, you're very welcome to work in all these settings. Okay, so we've got, you know, a few more people coming from health services than from local governments. Let's have a think about, everyone turn their cameras off and put your cameras on if you're working in local government. Sorry, working in state government. So whether you're a, you know, a state government employee. Okay, and we have good representation, and there is different parts of government there with us today. We've got health, the Department of Health and Human Services, we've got DEWP, we've got a range of state government people with us today. Now, I want you to turn your cameras off, put your cameras on if you work in the community service sector. So we again see a range of organisations represented here today in that space, and probably again this is where the numbers, some of the numbers are in terms of people that are with us. Turn the cameras off. Now I want you to turn your cameras back on if you have regional responsibilities. So this might be a sub-region or a really big region, but you can see here that what we end up with is a mixed bag of organisations that some work within municipal boundaries, some work within sub-regional boundaries, and some work in whole of regional boundaries. So the idea of that little exercise was to scratch your curiosity itch as to who else is with you in this discussion today. And hopefully you'll have the chance to connect with people through the processes from here as well around rural livability. And you might get a chance to have some conversations with people in some breakout rooms, or you might do what I do when I'm on a Zoom. I find my friend and I do a bit of private messaging throughout the course of the time. But this is where we also need to be aware of Zoom etiquette. And, you know, I don't think we need to talk too much about this, but just be careful when you start doing personal messages that you've got that sorted. So I'm hoping that covers all of the aspects of the technology. We're going to do our best to make it as interactive as we possibly can. We acknowledge that, you know, we may have some issues with connection, but let's just be patient. Let's just do the best we can as we work through today's agenda. And we're going to kick off today's agenda, and the big, obviously, focus is to have a better understanding of what this regional and rural livability framework is. And I'm going to hand over now to Glenda, who'll be able to introduce herself, and she's going to walk us through the process and exactly what this framework is. And remember, questions, comments, use the chat function, and there will be times when we'll be directly asking you information from the chat.
Great.
Okay,
thanks
for you, Glenda.
Yes, thank you very much, Anita. I just quickly, I am Glenda Stanislaw. I'm working with the 2 PCPs, particularly in the Great South Coast, around development and implementation of this framework. And I have a history of working in this region recently as one of the Medicare locals, but I really have had a wonderful time working with the working group in looking at how we can effectively develop a framework that will help us to focus our ability to impact on community livability within the Wimmera Southwest. I want to go through this framework. It's a great graphic and one that has been developed by a member of the working group that has been meeting over the last 18 months on this concept. And I just want to explain it in more detail. Very quickly, I want you to look at that inner circle of colored elements, and we are calling it elements that are talking about education, employment, housing, crime and safety, personal connection, social inclusion and communications, the natural environment, the built environment, food security, leisure, recreation and culture, health and social services, and transport. These 12 elements were extracted from the literature and have come from a whole range of very grounded research projects that have been both here in Australia and in overseas locations, determined that those were the elements that have been the most impactful and the most nominated as contributing to livability. Now, some of those frameworks have not been in the rural or regional areas. They have been in urban settings, but nonetheless, when the working group looked at what could we do to make this Great South Coast more livable, we extracted it from a range of different research and are trying to adapt it to make it useful here. So these 12 elements are the basic ingredients that contribute to livability within our community. If we go on to the graphic and look at the different colors that are used, we are calling those domains because you can group them up and it really is contributing to the triple bottom line. So it's about community connections, it's about the environment, it's about broadly the economy, and it's about lifestyle. These are the things that contribute to livability within our communities. Now, if you think about what your particular job is or your role within your organization, can I ask you to just really quickly, using the poll, can you just nominate where you see yourself working against these 12 elements? And we've had a poll put up there. Can I just get you really quickly to just type in where you fit? Where do you see yourself in your role, your organization? If you have any questions throughout the thing, as Anita said, please use the chat function. And we really, really want you to get this. This is complex, it's iterative. And so we will be moving fairly quickly because we have such a short time, and our apologies for that. We've got our head around it over 18 months. We're asking you to do it in about 18 minutes. And so it is a big ask. Okay, thank you very much for that. So we have a really good mix here of people who pretty much tick most of the boxes, although health and social services, of course, are by far and away the biggest, but personal connection, social inclusion is also a big one. So if you think about these elements, we also know that it isn't just, if you look back at the framework, it isn't just about the elements themselves that make a community more or less livable. It's the way that those elements, in fact, are approached or dealt with. And what we have in this outer ring is something that we are calling principles or lenses through which we look at the various elements. And so I want to just start with the first lens, which, yep, those are the principles. The accessibility as an example. Accessibility looks at each of those elements and considers how equitable or how inclusive they might be. Just having housing isn't sufficient. We want housing that in fact is equitable to all parts of the community. We want it to be available and affordable. And one of the issues that we are constantly having in our location is the fact that we've got some housing, but do we have, for example, sufficient social housing to attract or to service all of the different sectors in our population? Another principle that we might have is that of, can you just, Anita? Yep, connectivity. And we know that a connected community is incredibly important in order to develop social cohesion and inclusiveness. So connectivity considers the means and ways that we connect. It's not just digital connectivity, which we all complain about a lot, because we know that we have areas within the Great South Coast that are black spots and that prevent everybody from necessarily being able to use digital connectivity. But it's more than that. It's also the ability to connect through our social networks and to be able to connect to services, whether it is, wherever we are located, whether it is in a regional center or whether we are really quite rural. It is being able to use those to optimize our participation in our communities and to collaborate for optimal outcomes. The next one that we're talking about is diversity. And diversity is about saying, hey, it's not only having one grocery store, it's not just having one form, but it is having a range of different options or choices so that we can have a diverse population that expresses the full richness of the various cultures, the various mindsets that contribute to better outcomes. And we talk about, for example, is there only one grocery store in town? Is there only one GP that I have the option to go to? So diversity is especially important as we become more and more culturally and ethnically diverse. The next one that we're talking about is flexibility. And flexibility really is about our ability to adapt and to change with changing circumstance. And haven't we had a lot of changing circumstance this year? We have had to be flexible in the way that we conduct our business, in the way that we live because of the pandemic. And it is about whether or not our community has the capacity to be flexible enough to adapt to what comes down the pipeline. Finally, we have the principle of sustainability. And sustainability obviously is looking into the future and making sure that we are using our resources, using what we have in an efficient, effective way so that we are not borrowing from future generations. And climate change has really hit that principle in the last year. We've had bushfires, we've had droughts. We know that that is something that has to be factored in to our framework. Now, those are the principles or lenses through which we look at the various elements. And what we want you to do now, thinking about these elements and these principles, what are some of the things that your organization influence? So what we want you to do is, using the chat, just quickly type what kind of agency you come from, what is your role in that agency, what element do you think that you primarily work with, and what are some of the principles that, or lenses that you need to look at while you are working with that element. So an example is, I work in community health, I'm the manager. The element that I work in is health and social services. And one of the big principles is, I need to make sure that the community, there's accessibility, that people can use my service no matter where they are, no matter what their need. So feel free to add more than one, but can you just quickly, using the chat, start typing that in, and I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. And you may work in more than one element. That's fine. Just put it up wherever you work, and just some of the different lenses through which you look at your work. I want you to continue doing that, but just because of the time factor, I am going to talk a little bit now about the influences which you see on the left side of your screen. Yep. So we all are aware that there are influences that suddenly come out of the blue that impact on our communities, our work, our lives. And we need to acknowledge that. Some of them are more global or national, some of them are very local. And just some examples that we've put down here, not that it's necessarily comprehensive, but obviously globalization, the population, climate, pandemics, the economy, whether it's good or bad, government policy, all of those things impact on how we live our lives, how we work, how we relate. And more locally, we obviously have, what about the distance or the remoteness from the main clusters of services? What about the way that land is used around us? What about the geographic diversity or the cultural diversity of our community? That, again, is something that contributes to our overall community livability. And as we are struggling to think of how we collectively work to make our communities more livable, more fun to be in, these are factors that we need to acknowledge and work with. So they do have a cascading effect and impact on our elements, our principles, and overall livability. Okay, so that is the framework in essence. And what we would now like you to do, if we can just ask you, do you think that there is something missing in these graphics, something that we've obviously need to include? If so, can you pop it into chat right now? We'd love to have, this is really about testing our framework. So I noticed that, for example, somebody.
Glenda, can I just say something here, that I think that we're just asking at this point, are there any particular influences that we've missed?
Yes.
So what are is there anything that comes up that's not listed in this line here around the global and national influences?
Or the local ones?
That's not listed in the local ones that you think, actually, I reckon there's something else that needs to be considered, rather than thinking about the overall framework at this stage?
Okay, yep, that's fine.
Glenda, do you want to make any comments about any of the stuff that's coming through the chat?
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the things I'm seeing a lot around collaboration or partnership, and that's one of the I'll just refer back to one of those principles, which is about connectivity, or you know, those connections. And yes, definitely one of the things that makes a community livable is really that whatever we do promotes us being connected. It certainly is also part of that social inclusion, connection, the cohesion of a community. And so it is in that graphic. One of the things I should say really quickly is that there is very precise definitions for each of the 12 elements, as well as the 5 principles or lenses. And after this seminar or forum, we will be sending it out to each of you for comment, just so that you understand what precisely they refer to. Okay, well, look, I think, again, because of time, but thank you for that. And please, this is all draft. Just because we've been working on it, this is now our test to you to see whether or not we've got it right, what we've missed, what we need to tweak or to totally change. And so please use the chat or whatever way you want in order to contact us and tell us more about it, how you think this works. All right. So why did we do a framework? How do we see this framework working? Well, concurrent with this, we have been working on a lot of data development, and part of that is because of the municipal public health plans. Part of that is because of wanting to underpin this framework and each of the elements with good data about what is happening in our region. And therefore, we are looking at current strategies and initiatives that are already being worked on, because this isn't about initiating a whole lot of new strategies, a whole lot of new initiatives. This is about recognizing what is going on, using the framework to bring together the range of different people working on all of these social determinants of health and aligning them in order to really get a transformative initiative over a 10 to 20 year period. So that's really the purpose of the framework. It's just to help us in our thinking to align what people are already doing primarily, and to bring together all of our collective work and thoughts. All right, now what we're now going to just explain what is a focus area. So a focus area is just an area which has initiatives and strategies that will improve on a regional basis rural and regional livability. It has to add value across the whole of the region, and it uses all the elements, principles, domains, and influences in a collective way to do that. It is inclusive, as I said before, of what is currently happening. It is not about generating a whole raft of new actions or initiatives. So I want to just go quickly through a few examples, and I will do it really, really fast. Let's take an example of accessible and affordable digital connectivity for all.
Excuse me, Glenda, for 1 second. You don't have to rush, but we're slightly ahead, so no need to rush excessively.
Okay, I think, yeah, we'll see. But if you want to go to the next slide, that'd be great, Anita. Okay, so if you look at that as a focus area, what you'll see is that it ticks a range of different elements, and we would apply 4 of the different lenses to it. So obviously it has impact in employment in the area for those who are working in education, health and social services. It has direct impact on personal connections, of course, and enables social inclusion and communication. The big lens would be connectivity, but it allows greater diversity, accessibility, and allows us to be much more flexible. So it is a big focus area to improve livability within the region, and it covers the whole of the Great South Coast. So that might be a focus area that would be prioritized and nominated. Now, we all know we've been talking about digital connectivity for yonks, but if we were to nominate 5 or 6 focus areas across the Great South Coast, and all of us collectively to agree to focus on those for the next 5 to 10 years, what a difference we might make if that was our priority. Okay, Anita, the next one. Another example might be to climate proof our social housing stock. Again, that means that we improve the insulation in the home to make it more healthy and cheaper for those who live there. It's about sustainability. So again, if we look at the elements and we look at the principles, what we see is that, again, it ticks several of them. Not as much as the previous one, but it's still, in terms of housing, in terms of employment, obviously health and social services for those who live in that housing stock. It improves our ability to be flexible around what comes down the pipeline and more sustainable. So it's a smaller focus area, but again, it has impact. The final one that I wanted to use was one that all of you are really familiar with because you've been working on this for the last several years. It has been a priority in the municipal public health plans and integrated health promotion plans of the LGAs in this region. And it's access to affordable, healthy food, water, and healthy eating options. Again, if that was chosen to be a continued focus area and priority, then we'll look at what it covers. Food security, health and social services. It improves social inclusion and connection, and all of the 4 principles or lenses can be used when looking at that particular focus area. Allows us to be more diverse, much more sustainable if we're not drinking fizzy drinks, but we are drinking water. All of those things. Yep, I see some examples already, and that's exactly what we're going to do now. We are going to ask you to tell us what you like about the framework, whether you get it. You know, I've rushed through this and I know that it's complex, but we'd ask you what you like, how you think it could be strengthened, and if you have time, if you want to share with us a potential focus area, that's fine. I'm going to hand back to Anita now.
Okay, thanks, Glenda. On notice, Glenda, after the breakout room, we're going to come back and talk about the data, so everyone can hear about the work that's been done to the development of data and data profiles concurrently to the development of the framework. We'll talk about that after the breakout room. What we're going to do now is you're going to be allocated to a breakout room. So running concurrently to the development of the framework, there's been other work to collect data and evidence around livability and to help in evidence-informed decision making. So Glenda's going to give a bit of an overview of that work and where we're at with the data and how it can, when and how it can be accessed, etc.
Okay, just really quickly, concurrently, as most people know, the PCPs have traditionally supported local governments in preparing their municipal public health plans and in supporting them to do integrated health promotion. And part of that has been to do some data collection and to demonstrate trends over time. And so that has occurred for the 5 LGAs across the Great South Coast and is currently available on the Southwest PCP's website as called an intelligence hub. And that is where the data related to that sits. In looking at this framework, concurrently, what we have tried to do is building on that data collection to look at each of the various elements and to determine what data points will help us to be informed about where the gaps are, where we might potentially focus our energy to make the biggest difference in that particular element. So what is anticipated is the same data people who have been working on the profiles for the LGAs are now looking at the data in terms of those elements. And we are anticipating that in late February, we will have a paper that brings together those data sets to help inform us in our discussion about where we might focus our attention going forward. I think,
Thanks, Glenda.
yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so that's a piece of work that's happening concurrently. Exciting, obviously, as you're all coming up into planning processes, to have access to more data, particularly that reflects the broader elements of livability and ultimately the social and economic determinants of health. So exciting to see a level of intelligence collection which really guides and ensures the best decisions are made around priorities and action towards, you know, creating communities where people are able to thrive in communities where they love to be. So obviously you've had the great opportunity to talk about the framework and probably a whole lot of other things in your breakout room. I want you to have a think about, we've got another poll here. And it's really just a temperature check, not necessarily, you know, asking you to make massive commitments, but just a sense for the working group here have developed this framework. And the question is, does the regional and rural livability framework presented today add value or benefit your work? There's 5 options for you to answer. It'd be really great if you can, you know, do that for us. 93% have voted. I feel like we're at tribal council. And what we have is, you know, support for a sense that it actually can add real value to your work. So I think that's exciting for the group who've been involved in delivering it, in terms of a better understanding of what you're currently, what you are thinking. Now we're going to have a look at what the next steps are in this process. And as a you know, facilitator, I was really hoping to get, you know, yes or likely responses to that poll, because obviously it would dictate and determine the ways forward. But at the moment, the ways forward into stage 3 of this process towards a sub-regional or Great South Coast livability strategy is to spend between now and February connecting with organisations, getting people the information that you're required to, you know, really understand. And obviously from their last poll, people are wanting some more information or more time to think about this and spend the time engaging, continue the engagement, and also to gather information together around leader or focus areas. What's the data telling us that's been collected? What is community saying are the key focus areas, the big livability issues for them? And also what you as organisations in leadership roles in local community are telling, seeing what the key focus areas. So that will come together through the start of now to the start of 2021. In late February, a paper will be developed and obviously circulated to, you know, provide some stories around those focus areas and a collection of the evidence that's enabled them to become focus areas, with the idea of bringing people together again in March to thinking about, you know, in Forum 2 to prioritise these focus areas towards the development of that livability strategy. So I think that here, what we can see here is that this is the phased development. So we're currently in phase 1, or have been in phase 1, really focusing on creating the evidence base to inform the direction during phase 2, seeking support for the framework and to define those focus areas towards that longer term plan. So you can see the sequential steps that will take us to the end, you know, March for the next to get together. And again, another temperature check. Again, you could, the last poll was really relating to whether you could see the value of the framework. And this one, again, no commitments, but a sense of your feelings as to whether you're interested in being involved in this next part of this process towards rural and regional plan around the Great South Coast. Again, you're not going to be held to account for any of this, but it will be an interesting way for the group to be able to see interest. And again, honesty is the best policy. Okay, I think we can end that poll, and we can see again that there's, you know, overwhelming interest in people being involved in the framework and the work and the regional planning going forward. Exciting for the group, no doubts. And what it is we're going to do now is give you a chance to think about, you know, potentially talk to some other people again in an informal way around this work. We were talking about, in the spirit of partnership, it's been tricky during the COVID pandemic when we're not getting the opportunity to meet face to face, because I think sometimes the best conversations happen at either end of a meeting or at the either end of the webinar. So we're going to give you a chance in a couple of minutes to elect to go into a breakout room and just have some informal conversations with people that are participating today. And really what's going to happen over the next little while is that all the people that have participated and those registered to participate today, I think we had up to close to 95 participants registered, and we've had 65 people come along. So really great participation from across the catchment. You'll receive more information via email next week around how the participation is going to go forward. There's been some inquiries about whether there's opportunities to have your emails, today's PowerPoint presentation sent, or links to that sent to you, and we certainly are happy to do that. Any questions? All your contact points for this work are listed there below. So Tracy, Mark, Jeanette, and Glenda, their information is there. And you know, maybe we could actually think about whether anyone has had any burning passion to share one of the key focus area that we'd really advocate for going forward, just as an idea. So if someone has got something that they really want to get off their chest, not as in, I reckon we should focus on this key focus area, use the chat to pop that in, and we will use that as part of the information collection process. We really want to thank you for your participation today. I think we've made good of a short amount of time to present something that's pretty complex. So look forward to working with people who have obviously made a commitment to thinking that this is something that they can see value of for their work. And if anyone's got any questions, queries, Tracy, Mark, Jeanette, or Glenda have got anything else they would like to add before we give people a chance to go off into a breakout room.
Thanks, Anita.
Mark?
Yeah, I just going forward, now that we've kind of you're starting to think about what could be a potential focus area, start thinking about over these next couple of months. Obviously, we're going to have a break at Christmas, but it's a good time to engage with your partners and start identifying, if we were going to make a difference, what would it be?
Fantastic. So let's, I assume there is an invitation now for going into the breakout room. Have a good chat for those people who choose to go into that. And those other people, you know what? You've got now 10 minutes probably between now and your next meeting.